Okay, well, I'm going to follow Erica's example and start out with a quote I shouldn't be making, but I can't resist. So this is from Confucius, apparently. It's that there are 3 pathways to wisdom. The first is through contemplation, and that is the noblest. The second, that's what we like to do, mostly all the academics among us especially. The second is through imitation, and that's the easiest. The third is through experience, and that is the bitterest. And I bring that out just to say that I think it captures the spirit and dreams that we have shared in our own most recent discussion and throughout the group, in that we're all busy thinking about how to address these problems, how to make a meaningful impact in our little time here together on Earth. We're also thinking that imitation would be really nice if we could come up with some compelling demonstrations for how to do things and then inspire others to replicate and scale those successful examples. That would solve our urgency problem and make things smooth and easy. But we also recognize the bitterness that has come from a lot of experience that's motivated this. If you look in many of the cases around the world at what motivated the investments and consideration of natural capital, it's been bitter experience. So we want to avoid that. And in our discussion, I guess, I'll just try and hit the highlights. We were talking, it was fun with people talking on the one hand about the great promise in reaching together for something that we could never hope to achieve alone, thinking about how far we've come as a community over the past 30 years and how much we need one another, how much all those disciplines we ignored in our own time in university are actually so vital to making any headway, and how all these other sectors and walks of life are really key. So we talked about how rapidly the tools are developing for quantifying natural capital and for implementing these ways of assessing natural capital in different contexts in the private sector, public sector, and so on. Being from Silicon Valley, I'll just report on something quickly that I think shows to me how difficult it is even to think ahead and dream about where we might be heading. There are many different businesses working on this problem, with Google being the one getting the most press, amassing data. We're all talking about how we need more data to conduct any of these analyses rigorously. They're amassing tons of data. They're developing a new platform called the Earth Engine that will allow you, unlike in Google Earth, which gives you a static view, to project under different scenarios of change how the future will look for natural capital and the different values that it confers on society. So this is all rapidly in the works, and the idea is to make this globally accessible. So there's, and there are a couple other companies. Cisco is developing something called Planetary Skin. They have a group based partly in London and Cambridge, actually, that is working on this. There's another company called C3 developing something along these lines, a little more secretly, so I don't have details. But there's a lot of innovation and change happening here, and a lot of promise to go with that. There's also been a rapid proliferation of real-world cases. A few years ago, we all worried that everybody just kept talking about, at least in North America, about the Catskills, the New York City decision to invest in watershed restoration in lieu of building a really expensive, roughly $6 to $8 billion water treatment plant to supply New York City with clean drinking water. But we've moved in the past decade well beyond that. There are hundreds of examples, and some neat ones came up in our discussion. At the same time, though, in the discussion with the promise came a lot of worries about how much needs to be gotten right for these things really to work, these things being ways of accounting for the performance of nations or companies with respect to natural capital, these things being the agreements that we establish, contracts, whatever they are, government programs to foster investment in natural capital and secure the most vital parts of it. So it's a tricky business, and I guess the bottom line in all of this is that we need partnership more than ever to address any of these problems effectively in the technical development, which has to go way beyond where we are today, although there's no reason not to act on the basis of technical capacity we have today. But there's a long way to go to adapting tools like Invest that will soon be on Google's Earth Engine platform to be used in the wide variety of contexts for mainstreaming natural capital into decisions. There's a lot of work to be done in advancing policy change and bringing visibility through communications, through learning new media that the older people here have been really inspired but intimidated by, and for magnifying the impact. And finally, I guess a point that really struck me that came out in our group was how naive we sometimes are, and I would say I'm probably the guiltiest among us, in just thinking about the decision-making process, that we tend to have these sort of idealized, simplified, naive views of how decision-making happens, and engaging a lot more in terms of research and then actual, implementing change in many different contexts worldwide is key to understanding, how people actually take the decisions we want to influence. So the summary words for us would be promise and peril, and with that Confucius quote in mind, I remain optimistic that we'll avoid the bitterest experience and enjoy our contemplation and working together to inspire change. Thanks.